Well, good morning, good day, everybody attending this webinar on Barix's efforts to support Dante. I'm happy that you're all here. First, some instructions. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A window. Patrick, our marketing director, will try to answer them by typing in there immediately. If he cannot, or if they're a bit more elaborate, we'll go through the questions at the end of the presentation. So what I will do here now is I am going to share my screen. And if everything goes fine, you should be seeing the IP audio client now with Dante presentation slide. Okay, I think we get going. We're very excited to talk about Dante on Barix. In general, you know Barix as a audio over IP, control over IP solution provider for what we call the standard data network, or I like to refer to it as the common network. So that is that data network that connects your phones with the internet, that connects your computers with the printers, that provides Wi-Fi access. It's that infrastructure that exists in schools, in factory buildings, in offices everywhere around the world. It's based on IP technology, and it's being used for a multitude of applications. This is the space Barix is in. This is where we provide solutions for audio over IP. This is where we can connect buildings, where we can provide paging solutions using that common or the standard data network. Some things we take care of when doing this. Bandwidth is critical, so we work with compressed audio. And since we try to support the entire technology that's available there, we see some delays. Now, in the last years, a IP-based audio technology has been evolving, which is Dante. Dante uses the underlying IP switches and technology, but it is really dedicated to provide audio transport over the network. It has two main features from my point of view. It is a very low latency, which means it can't really work with compression. It uses a lot of bandwidth. And the other benefit it has, it's kind of an out-of-the-box thing that many vendors have implemented to make an ecosystem that's working together. So this presentation is about how Barix moves towards the Dante space, or what we offer in this space. Now, very clearly, both spaces have their existence and there's strong reasons why you want to do one or the other space. Barix has been approached to support the Dante space, and what we come up with really is bridging tools. So what I'm showing you in the next 35 minutes here is how we connect the common network audio solution world around Barix with the Dante world. So how can we get mass notification systems to actually directly feed the Dante network? How can we get internet audio streams into a Dante network? How to connect a SIP phone system with a Dante network, and how to enable paging when a Dante network is in place. So, using Barix devices in a Dante environment, as I said, it is about bridging. It's about some key applications that we address and that I will cover in more details a bit later. For example, these applications include internet radio and a message scheduler into a Dante network, phone dialing into a Dante network, transmitting InformaCast audio into Dante, broadcasting announcements from a mobile phone to a Dante network, And last but not least, bridging multiple Dante networks. These are the applications that the new Dante features on the Barix products enable. So, how has this been solved so far? Of course, it has been solved so far. The answer of how you would have done this until now is by going analog and then buying an analog to Dante converter. For example, if I want to get a VoIP phone call into a Dante network, I could use a classic Barix device with a SIP client, use the analog input-output and feed them via Dante AVIO or third-party interface devices into the Dante network. Those interface devices are not cheap, especially when you compare them to Barix products. They weren't very much available in the last little while because of some chip shortage, and customers have approached us on a regular basis asking why we're not supporting Dante on the Barix products. Just to give you an idea, Dante-enabled products at Barix cost less than $50 more than non-Dante-enabled products. And they replace these adapters that easily cost $200 to $300 each. So really, it is a thing about convenience, but other than that, it also makes the installation easier to manage, and we'll look at that in a minute. So what products do we have that support Dante at the moment? Basically, it's all our products that run the audio, the firmware IP audio client IPAC. These include the Xstreamer M400, which is our IP audio decoder stereo. It has a line level output on RCA connectors, and it is now available with a Dante output. Xstreamer MPA400 is our feature-rich IP audio decoder, which can run on 4 PPOE and provide up to 40 watts amplified output onto 228 ohm, so it can directly connect to speakers or a horn speaker. The IPFormer TPA400 is our small IP audio decoder, PoE powered with 6 watt output to connect a speaker. And last but not least, our Annuncicom MPI 400, which is the new generation Annuncicom. It has a 1 watt speaker and line output. It has mic in, it has contact closures and relay outputs. All these 4 products can now be purchased with Dante enabled. One thing is important, and that has to do with how the licensings work. You cannot retrofit Dante on existing products. You need to buy from the manufacturing a new product and buy one that has Dante implemented. Dante needs to be enabled in the manufacturing process, so we made new product numbers for those products that have Dante included. And on this list here, we make the presentation available. You can see the product numbers they will of the Dante-enabled Xstreamer M400, or on this list, the Dante-enabled MPA 400, TPA 400, and Annuncicom MPI 400. So the key message here, if you want Dante on our products, you have to order the product with Dante. It cannot be retrofitted. So let's look a little bit about what does it mean to have Dante on this product. What's new, what's different on the Dante-enabled product versus the normal Xstreamer M400, for example. So the base idea is that we kept our standard functionality within the IPAC firmware. What we've done is we added the ability to interface with Dante. This is done with a software interface that is provided by AudioPoint, who is the owner of Dante. On the receiving side, in these new products, we now have the opportunity to do two things. We can receive Dante as a 2-channel virtual input to feed the SIP source back channel. So basically what it means is I can connect Dante with our SIP client, and instead of outputting this to a microphone or to the speaker, I can take a Dante link that is the microphone, and I can feed into a Dante link that is the speaker. Basically, with this, we'll see later, I enable a transparent SIP client into a Dante network without having to go analog. Now, the second and more flexible way of Dante into the IPAC, into our device, is Dante as a source to play Dante streams into the local analog output. For the people that know our products, our IPAC products, they know that we have a multi-level priority of different streams coming in. So, for example, we can have a background music stream, and then on top, we can have a announcement stream. And if anything comes in on the announcement stream, the device automatically tunes out the background music and provides that announcement stream. So in the same idea of priority levels, I can now configure a Dante stream, and we'll see that a bit later. And I can say that Dante stream has a priority. If anything comes there, then the device should actually use that input as the active audio stream to be processed and output via the device. So how do I configure this? Basically, in the user interface of our device on settings, you can select now input Dante. If on your device you see an input Dante, but it's grayed out, it means you have a non-Dante enabled device at your hand. As soon as it is a Dante enabled device, then I can select Dante, and that gives me the 2-channel virtual input used with SIP. The other area I see the receiving configuration is in my priorities. So under the tab sources, I now get one more source. So we have lots of sources. It could be an HTTP stream, it could be a local file, it could be a local scheduler. Now you can select Dante. So we'll talk a bit about what this is useful for, but for example, you can imagine you could do background sound via the common data network in your school, and in the event location, you actually have a Dante installation and they're having a concert. So now you can use that concert and play it to the common area using the Dante interface. So playing out Dante, Dante transmitting, Dante forwarding. As I mentioned before, and as you see on the user interface here on the left, the core functionality of all our devices is the ability to receive a variety of IP-based audio, SIP calls, HTTP streams, scheduled messages, which are scheduled inside the device. Select via priority which one should go to the output, and then feed this to the analog output of our device. Now, we have an option in these devices to RTP forward traffic. That's a standard feature. In addition, now we have added a feature that is instead of analog output. So at the output, I can select forwarding enabled, that you see on the bottom right here, and you can select protocol Dante. What happens now is every audio that comes out of the Barix device doesn't go to the analog output anymore. It now goes into a Dante channel. So with this, I can really glue the common data world with the Dante world. I can have an announcement system connected to fire alarms, but immediately feed that into a Dante network. So what does it mean on the Dante side? On the Dante side, I use Dante controller to configure my whole entire setup. the IPAC device now automatically appear on the Dante controller as channel transmitters and receivers. So if you look on the right side, you see the Unicast MPI here, multiple of them. You see an Xstreamer M400, and I can now select where the output channel of the Barix device should be fed to, or which channel in the Dante network should go to the Barix device. Dante, when configuring a port, also allows to configure some settings on that port. So the Dante controller handles some of the device configuration, and that is also supported. So if I have my port, I can actually go in and I can configure sample rate, the encoding format, the Dante latency, and I can edit the name so that I see the name I want to use on the Dante controller. Now, Dante is an IP stream, so the streams that go into the Dante network basically can have two kind of appearances. One is, it can be a Unicast stream, and when we're using it as a transmitter, it supports up to four Unicast streams. So that one output from the Barix device can be streamed to 4 Unicast destination within Dante. On the other hand, Dante supports multicast flows to serve multiple receivers with a single stream, and we can generate that in Dante. So by clicking on this multicast logo here, I can generate multicast flows within the Dante, carrying the audio that comes from my Barix device. Now, I talked a little bit about application. Let's go a little bit deeper and talk about all the variety of highly technical applications. And if you have an application where you need to interface, where you see a use for a product like this, contact us and we help you. So we can do basic RTP. IPAC receives an RTP stream and forwards it to Dante. The mass notification I'll talk about, IPAC receives an InformaCast, so a Barix device receives an InformaCast notification. We are a certified endpoint to InformaCast and could forward that directly into Dante. The same is true for Synapse. That is another third-party mass notification application. We're a certified endpoint to Synapse, and we can forward that directly into Dante. We have a scheduler in our devices. Each of those 4 devices I showed you has a message scheduler. You can upload messages, bells, advertisements, and you can run a scheduler into Dante directly. We support SIP, so the IPAC receives a SIP call and can forward it to Dante and versa. Which means I can, for example, have a stage with a microphone and all the speakers, and I can have an outside person calling into that venue, talking to the people on the stage by basically feeding the SIP call using Dante to my mixer, and then I can open up the caller, I can close them again from the mixer. So one of the special things is we can do SIP in the other way. This allows for a remote bidirectional interconnection of 2 Dante systems. We'll look at that in a minute. UDP, I can receive UDP streams and forward it. I can play from a USB and send the audio to Dante. HTTP streams, so web radio and similar things, I can feed directly into a Dante network. Paging, our very reliable IC paging can be forwarded into a Dante network. So if I have a school that already has Barix paging, and then I have an event location in that school that runs a Dante network, I can actually feed those announcements into that Dante network. And of course, we can do all the other things that Barix provides, like triggering a file play via an API, so you can make a button station, and all this without having to go through analog. So let's look at some of these applications. This is dialing from a phone into a Dante network. I just explained it. Using a Barix device, I can actually connect a SIP phone directly into Dante, and it's one channel that we provide. So we can have one call per device into a Dante network and then use Dante routing to set this to the speakers in the venue, or to use the microphone of the person that speaks at the moment to be connected to that SIP call. I mentioned InformaCast. There is a variety of third-party solutions. InformaCast and Synapse are two for which we are actually certified endpoints. Any customer that uses InformaCast by single wire, and that is actually a lot of customers because they're selling via Cisco systems, they're already pre-installed, and a lot of people use this for mass notification, can use now a Barix device to feed a Dante network with that announcement. So we talked about internet radio into a Dante network. Customer wants to have a background music channel, some internet radio. In the graphics, I have copied Radio Swiss Pop. This is a very particular thing here in Switzerland. This is a free internet radio music mix that people can use. And in many venues, people just play that during the background. And we can feed that into the Dante network without having to go analog. The application scheduled messages into Dante networks I consider extremely useful. For example, you have a theater and it wants to have scheduled announcements, or you want manual triggered announcements such as the event resumes in 5 minutes, or the classical theater gong sound that tells everybody it's time to empty the glass, go to the washroom and get back to their seats. All this can be fed into a Dante network using the new Barix Dante-enabled devices. Now, one thing Dante had to give up on because of what they tried to achieve was the whole environment of Wi-Fi and wireless. So Dante's key feature, lowest latency, we're talking 3 to 10 milliseconds, and the ability to therefore have everything synced is a feature that had to come at the trade. So Dante needs a lot of bandwidth because they can't do a lot of compression. That usually is a problem when I want to run it on the common network. And I haven't seen many installations where people run all their printer traffic and everything on the same network that they're running Dante. The benefit of Dante is lowest delay. One of the shortcomings, you can't run it over a wireless network. So as soon as you want to go wireless, you need to go outside of the Dante network and go into the standard or the common network. And that's where Barix comes into play. So, for example, one thing we can offer is if I would like to make an announcement from the phone using the Wi-Fi network into Dante, we can enable this with our paging gateway and with our now newly Dante-enabled devices that can receive IC paging and then feed it directly into a Dante network. Or as drawn here, I could even do announcements and select which of multiple Dante networks I want to do those announcements in. Now, very clearly from the web application on my phone to it coming out of Dante, we're talking about much more delay. Usually, actually, people use this in a mode that we support where you can record your announcement, and when you're happy, you just send it. And then the delay doesn't matter much. But the beauty is I can provide wireless connection into the Dante network. And this is an application area where we see Barix as a possible player when it comes to Dante installation. And even the other way around. Now there, I don't actually have a Dante-enabled device, so we still have to go analog. But this is a very nice application for people that run Dante but want to go Wi-Fi with the audio too. We have this solution called AudioPoint 3.0. It takes an analog audio in and feeds it over the common data network using Wi-Fi to a mobile phone app with relatively low latency. So we're talking 100 milliseconds here. And what I can do with this is I can help, for example, hearing impaired people in an audience to listen and follow a speaker or to listen and follow a translation. Now, here, I still have to go from Dante to analog. That might be a future feature that our AudioPoint can directly connect to Dante. But it is another application that shows why interactivity or bridging between the standard data network infrastructure and the Dante network can be extremely useful. So one special case I'd like to look at here is a Dante network bridge. Customer came to us and said they have the need to bridge multiple Dante networks. For example, I have a train station. It locally has a Dante network. That's all nice. But I would like to forward the announcements from one train station to other train stations. And that means I have to go to the standard data network, because Dante doesn't really extend well over an unknown or local area network or over the internet. So they have to go into other technologies, which again, they do today, because what they do is they go out of Dante to analog, and then they buy an analog to SIP converter from Barix, SIP to analog, and then back into Dante. What's new is we can do this now directly. So we can connect Dante to the Unicast MPI 400, and then, for example, use SIP to establish a connection. And that connection can be over the internet worldwide. Totally depends how you set up your SIP network, feeding the other side. Again, obviously there is delay. And we'll talk about delay in a minute. Our device processing all the audio data through the IPAC software adds 200 milliseconds of delay. If I make a SIP call, that adds another amount of delay. But if I just want an announcement from one train station to also go to the other, it doesn't matter that the two stations aren't perfectly in sync. I can still keep a very low delay relatively to that announcement using this technology. So this has actually been one of the drivers for our Dante implementation, because many people approached us and said, I need to bridge Dante networks. How can I do this without having to go analog? Now, talking about special case, one thing that's really interesting here is in our IPAC standard firmware, we can control relay switching based on audio activity on the source type. What does it mean? It means I can say, oh, I've discovered audio, switch the relay and signal that the audio is on. What I do then with this relay from, I don't know, an orange light that says there is audio now to switching some amplifiers on or whatever, that's left to the installer that uses this application. But what's really cool now is I can feed Dante into an MPI 400 that actually has relays, and I can make the relay enabled on Dante presence. So if audio on that Dante channel appears, I switch the relay. And that can open a whole bag of applications with what we would call Dante controlled relay. Now, not everything is perfect. There are a few shortcomings, obviously, and I want to talk about those in a minute. First of all, as I mentioned before, the Dante-enabled device as decoders, because we're running all this IPAC priority analysis and switching and so on, adds about up to 200 milliseconds towards the output. So a native Dante low latency decode to analog, the one you get from AVIO devices, we don't support at the moment. We can follow up with this if demand exists. For us, there's always the question, well, are the products that we're having unique enough that people pay the price if it's just a simple Dante decoder? Please let us know, but also be aware, our Dante interface doesn't slow down Dante. So I'm still having everything Dante within the 3 or 10 or whatever milliseconds. But when I start processing the audio and then, for example, outputting it to analog, we have more delay. So the analog output of our device in Dante mode is not in sync with the output of a Dante speaker. To overcome this today, we can go AES67 mode, then I'm losing all the priority handling. But if I want all those features of IPAC, this is what I have to live with. A second shortcoming, which we're also looking for feedback from you, is at the moment, the Dante-enabled Barix products only have one Ethernet port. I mentioned in the presentation, we're using a software stack provided by AudioNet to provide the Dante interface. Good thing about this, we're not dependent on chip availability, which had some Dante manufacturers and customers suffer a lot in the last few years. So we don't have that problem. But it means that the standard network and the Dante network must at some point share the same infrastructure. While this is possible, we see some people doing this, we really like to know how important it would be to have devices with 2 Ethernet ports. Please inform us and we'll do it. There's no magic to it. It's just that the products that we have enabled it at the moment all just have 1 Ethernet port. And our last shortcoming, I mentioned in the beginning, Dante enabling on our products is only possible at production. This means Dante-enabled Barix devices have their own product numbers, and you need to decide on whether you need Dante on the device or not at the moment you order the product. So we're coming to the summary. Dante-enabled devices offer a cost saving of 80 to 90% on interfacing expenses by eliminating the need for expensive converters. You don't have to go through analog. We're tapping into Dante and we're visible on the Dante controller. Dante-enabled Barix devices bring the powerful Barix IPAC firmware features on standard IP networks or on the common IP network to Dante. So talk to us, talk to your designers about how they integrate VoIP into Dante, how they bridge Dante networks, talk to them whether they need to integrate with mass notification and with paging systems, or ask them how they solve the need for an announcement scheduler. The answer now is look at Barix products, at Barix Dante-enabled IPAC firmware running products that can support all these applications. So for us, it actually is quite a process to become a Dante license taker. We have achieved all this. We now master the technology on our hardware, and we're ready to do things in that space. So this is not the end, this is the beginning of our products that interface with Dante or support Dante implementations. Please talk to us if there's something that you see missing, but of course, also talk to us if this was interesting and you have applications and you have questions, or you would like to get our pre-sales support to help you configure how we solve applications using these now Dante-enabled devices. Yeah, so you can contact us at barix.com. You can write to us at presales@barix.com or at sales@barix.com, or the best is via that web page. There's a form to fill in. We gladly react and get in contact with you.